Commander Kate Marshall stood motionless in the sprawling new Terra shipyards, maintaining her professional composure despite the barely concealed laughter echoing through the observation deck. Above them, through the crystalline viewport, her newly commissioned vessel hung in the construction cradle like a challenge to conventional engineering. The THS Unconventional lived up to its name in every way possible. "I must ask, Commander," Supreme Admiral Zextol of the Zordlaxian fleet drawled, his iridescent scales flickering with amusement, "did your engineers perhaps consume excessive quantities of your Earth beverages during the design phase?" His entourage of alien diplomats chittered appreciatively at the jab, their various appendages and sensory organs twitching with mirth. Marshall allowed herself a small smile. "Every design element serves a purpose, Admiral." "Purpose?" The Medusan ambassador interrupted, her crown of sensor tendrils writhing in disbelief. "The hull plating doesn't even match. And those antiquated solar collectors, they belong in a historical museum, not a modern warship." The Unconventional's hull did indeed look like a patchwork quilt of mismatched metals and awkward protrusions. Sections of standard fleet armor sat alongside what appeared to be civilian-grade plating. Bizarre nodules and bumps dotted the surface in seemingly random patterns, and the entire starboard side bore what looked like outdated energy collection arrays. "I've seen more elegant designs in salvage yards," a crystalline Nexus lord hummed disapprovingly. "The asymmetry alone violates basic combat engineering principles." Marshall clasped her hands behind her back, drawing herself to her full height, still a good 2 meters shorter than most of the alien delegates. "Perhaps that's why humanity was chosen to lead this project. We see possibilities where others see only flaws." Admiral Zextol's scales shifted to a condescending shade of violet. "Your species' enthusiasm is admirable. But this vessel would not last 5 minutes in a real combat situation. The energy signature alone is all wrong. It fluctuates like a damaged drive core." Through the viewport, maintenance drones swarmed around the Unconventional, appearing to make last-minute repairs to its already chaotic-looking hull. In reality, they were installing the final components of systems that would revolutionize space combat, if they worked as intended. "We look forward to the demonstration next week," the Medusan ambassador said with fake politeness. "Though perhaps we should position our observation vessels at a safe distance. Those solar arrays look like they might fall off at the first sign of stress." Marshall checked her wrist display, making a show of examining the time. "If you'll excuse me, distinguished delegates, I have a final systems check to oversee." As she turned to leave, Admiral Zextol called after her. "Tell me, Commander Marshall, what combat doctrine could possibly justify such an unconventional design?" She paused at the doorway, allowing herself another small smile. "We took inspiration from Earth's oceans, actually. Have you ever heard of the pistol shrimp, Admiral?" The alien dignitaries exchanged confused glances. Marshall continued, "A tiny creature, barely worth noticing. But it creates shockwaves that reach temperatures nearly as hot as the surface of your sun. Sometimes, the most powerful innovations come from the most unlikely sources." With that, she left them to their mockery, striding purposefully toward the docking tube that would take her to her ship. Her ship, the product of 3 years of secret development, countless sleepless nights, and the kind of innovation that only comes when you stop looking at how things should work and start asking how they could work. Lieutenant Rodriguez waited at the airlock, tablet in hand. "Final installations are at 98%, Commander. The quantum manifolds are sensing better than expected, and our guests still have no idea what they're actually looking at. Dr. Thompson says the biomimetic systems are hidden exactly as planned. They're seeing exactly what we want them to see." Marshall nodded, stepping into the airlock. "Then let's make sure everything's ready. They may be laughing now, but in a week's time, they're going to learn why humanity never stopped studying Earth's smallest creatures." The airlock cycled, and Commander Marshall stepped aboard her impossible ship, ready to prove that sometimes the best jokes are the ones where nobody realizes the punchline until it's too late. Deep within the Unconventional's main engineering bay, Dr. Jake Thompson balanced on a maintenance ladder, his hands deep inside what appeared to be a malfunctioning power conduit. In reality, he was fine-tuning the final connections of their most advanced weapon system. "Pass me the quantum spanner," he called down to his assistant, Sarah Chen, "and make sure it's set to pattern delta." The young engineer handed up the tool, her eyes fixed on the holographic diagnostics floating above her wrist display. "Energy signature is still fluctuating, Doctor, just like you predicted." "Perfect." Thompson grinned, making a minute adjustment. "The more they think we're struggling with basic power management, the better." Commander Marshall entered the bay, stepping carefully around what appeared to be scattered parts, but were actually precisely placed resonance sensors. "Status report. The Mantis shrimp array is online," Thompson reported, climbing down. "When we activate it, those mismatched hull plates will generate strike forces that could crack a small moon. The Zorblaxians won't know what hit them." Marshall nodded, moving to a central display that showed the ship's true configuration. The seemingly random hull protrusions were actually part of an interlocking system based on Earth's most devastating natural weapons. Each flaw had been carefully calculated to appear as a design mistake while serving multiple combat functions. "Show me the Archer fish system," she ordered. The display shifted, highlighting what the alien delegates had dismissed as outdated solar panels. In combat, these panels would channel energy through quantum-entangled pathways, creating focused beams that could pierce any known shielding technology. The design had been inspired by the simple fish that caught insects by spitting water with incredible precision. Lieutenant Rodriguez entered, carrying a stack of data tablets. "Engineering teams report all systems nominal. Commander, the quantum manifolds are operating at 110% efficiency." "And the noise?" Marshall asked. "Still leaking through exactly as planned. Every scanner in the shipyard shows us running with slight power fluctuations and minor system instabilities. No one's going to look twice at a ship that appears to be barely holding together." Thompson moved to another console, his fingers dancing across the controls. The wall display shifted to show their most innovative system, the pistol shrink defense grid. What looked like random structural supports were actually cavitation generators, capable of creating microscopic bubbles that collapsed with the force of a solar flare. "We've improved the targeting algorithm," he explained. "By studying how the shrimp naturally aims its claw, we were able to increase accuracy by 30%. Marshall examined the data, a slight smile playing at her lips. "And the asymmetric hull design is driving the Zorblaxian engineers crazy," Rodriguez chuckled. "They're so focused on how wrong it looks, they haven't realized it's mathematically perfect for generating chaos theory combat patterns. The ship's apparent instability is actually its greatest strength." A junior engineer rushed in, nearly tripping over a collection of what appeared to be spare parts, but were actually quantum field generators. "Commander, the alien delegation is requesting another inspection of the problematic power core." "Right on schedule," Marshall said. "Dr. Thompson, make sure the engine room is suitably concerning. Lieutenant Rodriguez, begin power-up sequence for tomorrow's demonstration. Let's give our guests something to really worry about." As her crew scrambled to their positions, Marshall took a final look at the true schematics before they were hidden away. The Unconventional was more than just a ship. It was a testament to humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. While other species sought to perfect existing technologies, humans had looked to nature's most unlikely champions for inspiration. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "they'll learn why Earth's smallest creatures have survived for millions of years, and why underestimating something because it looks weak is the last mistake many predators ever make. The emergency alert cut through the artificial night cycle of the Galactic Defense Council's crystal spire, its urgent pulse reflecting off the polished surfaces in crimson waves. Commander Marshall stood at parade rest before the hastily assembled council, her expression carefully neutral as the massive hologram dominated the chamber center. The Ravager fleet has been detected moving through the Carina sector, Admiral Zextal announced, his scales now a pale green of concern. Long-range scans indicate at least 30 capital ships, plus support vessels. A hologram showed the Ravager Armada in all its terrible glory. Black ships built from stolen technology, their hulls bristling with weapons that had devastated countless worlds. Their very appearance seemed designed to inspire fear, all sharp angles and predatory silhouettes. They're on course for the Centauri colonies. The Medusan ambassador's sensor tendrils writhed in distress. 3 billion civilians live in that sector. Marshall stepped forward. The unconventional stands ready to assist in the defense fleet. A moment of uncomfortable silence filled the chamber before Admiral Zextal's scales shifted to the deep purple of barely contained amusement. Commander Marshall, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, this is not the time for jest. The Ravager fleet has never been defeated in direct combat. All the more reason to try something they've never encountered before, Marshall countered, pulling up her own data display. The Unconventional's unique configuration would last approximately 3 minutes against a single Ravager vessel, the crystalline Nexus Lord interrupted. Let alone an entire fleet. No, we must deploy proven warships for this threat. The council chamber erupted in strategic discussions, various species arguing about fleet deployments and defense patterns. Marshall watched as they fell into predictable patterns. Planning by the same rulebook, the Ravagers had already defeated countless times. Admiral Zextal raised his hand for silence. We will position the combined defense fleet here, at the Helios checkpoint. It's the most defensible position between the Ravagers and the colonies. And the Unconventional? Marshall asked, already knowing the answer. The Admiral's scales rippled with what might have been pity. Will be assigned to patrol the empty quarter, far from any potential engagement. He paused, adding with false kindness, for your own safety, of course. Lieutenant Rodriguez, standing behind Marshall, tensed slightly. But Marshall simply nodded. As you command, Admiral. We'll depart for the empty quarter immediately. As they left the council chamber, Rodriguez waited until they were alone in the transport tube before speaking. They're making a mistake, Commander. No, Marshall said, a slight smile playing at her lips. They're doing exactly what we expected. Contact Dr. Thompson. Tell him to begin final preparations. You think the Ravagers will really take the bait? Marshall's smile widened. The Council is positioning their entire fleet at the most obvious defensive point, using tactics the Ravagers have defeated before. Where would you attack if you were them? Understanding dawned on Rodriguez's face. The empty quarter. They'll bypass the defense fleet completely and find what appears to be a single, poorly designed ship guarding their path to the colony's unprotected flank. Marshall checked her combat display. How are the pistol shrimp arrays charging? All systems green, hidden under the power fluctuations. The Mantis strike capacitors are primed too, just like we planned. They reached the Unconventional's docking bay, where Dr. Thompson waited with his engineering team. His usually cheerful face was serious. Commander, long-range sensors just picked up multiple quantum wakes. The Ravager fleet is already changing course. Marshall nodded, unsurprised. Right on schedule. They're about to learn why Earth's predators don't just look for the biggest prey. She turned to her crew. Battle stations, everyone. Let's show the galaxy why the most dangerous creatures are often the ones you never see coming. As her crew rushed to their positions, Marshall took one last look at the crystal spire where the Council still planned their doomed defense. Sometimes, she thought, the best place to hide a weapon was in plain sight, disguised as something too ridiculous to take seriously. Space rippled like disturbed water as the first Ravager ships tore through the quantum barrier. Their black hulls seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars, making them look like moving holes in reality. One by one, they emerged into the empty quarter, their formation perfect and predatory. Commander Marshall stood on the Unconventionals bridge, watching the tactical display with steady eyes. Count. 37 capital ships, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, her voice calm despite the odds. Plus 62 support vessels, roughly double what intelligence suggested. Good. Marshall's slight smile caught her bridge crew off guard. More ships means more witnesses. The Ravager fleet's formation shifted as they detected the lone vessel in their path. Their reaction was almost dismissive. A single ship adjusting its course would have been enough to crush the apparent obstacle. Instead, the entire fleet moved to surround the Unconventional, like wolves circling wounded prey. A communication request flashed across the main screen. Marshall nodded to her communications officer. "Let's meet our guests." The screen filled with the image of the Ravager commander. His organic parts were almost lost among the cybernetic enhancements that covered most of his body. When he spoke, his voice was a blend of natural and synthetic tones. "What fortune," he said, multiple optical sensors focusing on Marshall. "I expected the empty quarter to live up to its name. Instead, we find entertainment." "This is a restricted zone," Marshall replied, her voice professional. "By order of the Galactic Defense Council." The Ravager commander's laugh cut her off. "Your ship? I've never seen its like. Was it assembled from debris? Or perhaps it's some sort of merchant vessel playing at war?" The THS Unconventional is a fully commissioned vessel of the human fleet. "Ah, humans." The commander's cybernetic eyes wared as they adjusted. "Always so. Creative. Your species has a reputation for unusual solutions. But this," he gestured at her ship, "this is beyond unusual. This is unconventional," Marshall suggested. "Pathetic," he finished. "My sensors show your power core is barely stable. Your weapon systems, if you have any, are not even registering on our scans. And that hull design." He shook his head. "It offends the very laws of physics." Dr. Thompson's voice came through Marshall's private channel. "All systems primed. Commander, the fish are in the barrel." Marshall kept her expression neutral. "I'll give you one chance to retreat." The bridge crew of the Ravager ship actually laughed out loud. Their commander smiled, an expression made unsettling by his cybernetic implants. "Counter offer. Surrender now, and I'll make your deaths quick. Resist, and we'll take your ship apart piece by piece, with you inside to experience every moment." "Interesting proposal," Marshall said. "But I have a counter offer." She nodded to Rodriguez. The Unconventional's unstable power core suddenly pulsed, sending out what appeared to be a cascade of system failures. Warning lights flashed across the hull. The ship began to rotate erratically, its strange protrusions seeming to shudder and break. The Ravager commander's expression shifted to disgust. "Your ship is falling apart before we even fire. This is beneath us. All ships target their bridge. Let's end this embarrassment." Marshall touched her console, opening a channel to all hands. "Combat Protocol Echo 7. Initiate on my mark." She looked up at the screen, meeting the Ravager commander's gaze. "By the way, have you ever heard of the electric eel?" His cybernetic face showed confusion. "The what?" "Mark." The Unconventional's apparent death throes transformed in an instant. Every failing system, every broken protrusion, every malfunctioning panel suddenly pulsed with purpose. The ship's erratic rotation revealed itself as the perfect setup for what came next. The last thing the Ravager commander saw before his screen went dark was Commander Marshall's smile growing just a fraction wider. Time to show you why Earth's predators are still around after millions of years. The Ravager fleet's first volley never reached its target. The Unconventional's malfunctioning hull plates suddenly pulsed with quantum energy, creating a cascading wave of micro-singularities that swallowed the incoming fire. Those random protrusions lit up in sequence, each one adding to the gravitational symphony that was rapidly turning space itself into a weapon. Multiple direct hits, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, her voice steady as the ship's true systems came online. Their forward shields never detected the pistol shrimp array. They were looking for energy weapons, not cavitation bubbles. Through the bridge viewport, Marshall watched as the first wave of Ravager ships reeled from the unexpected counterattack. Their perfect formation broke apart as ships struggled against gravitational forces they'd never encountered before. Status of the Mantis shrimp systems, Marshall asked, her fingers dancing across her command console. Dr. Thompson's voice came through clear and excited. Charged and ready. These idiots still think our hull misalignments are structural weaknesses. They haven't realized they're actually quantum strike calculators. The Ravager commander's face appeared on the screen again, his cybernetic eyes whirring as they tried to process what they were seeing. What is this? What have you done? We took inspiration from nature, Marshall replied calmly, even as her ship executed a series of movements that should have been impossible. Earth's oceans hold more mysteries than your entire fleet's database. She nodded to Rodriguez, who activated the next phase. The outdated solar panels that had drew so much mockery suddenly aligned, creating a web of quantum-entangled energy that sliced through the Ravager's defensive screens like they weren't there. Archer Fish Targeting System engage, Rodriguez announced. 27 direct hits. Their shields never detected the attack because they were looking for standard energy signatures. The Ravager fleet's response was chaos. Their ships, designed to fight conventional battles against conventional foes, found themselves unable to counter weapons based on Earth's most overlooked creatures. Every attempt to establish a new formation was met with another impossible attack from another impossible angle. Commander, the Ravager leader's voice had lost its confidence. Your ship, it's not possible. Our scans show. Your scans show exactly what we want them to show. Marshall cut him off. Just like a pistol shrimp's prey never sees the attack coming, or how a mantis shrimp's strike is too fast for most eyes to track. As if on cue, the Unconventional's hull rippled with energy. Those mismatched plates that had drawn so much derision suddenly moved in perfect harmony, creating a cascade of strikes that hit with the force of small supernovas. 3 Ravager ships simply ceased to exist, their advanced armor useless against weapons they'd never been designed to stop. Secondary systems online, Thompson reported. The electric eel arrays are charged. Permission to show them why Earth's oceans are more dangerous than deep space. Marshall allowed herself a small smile. Permission granted. Lieutenant Rodriguez, bring us about. Let's show them pattern delta. The Unconventional moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Each awkward angle, each seemingly random protrusion, suddenly made perfect sense as part of a combat dance that had more in common with Earth's deadliest predators than traditional space combat. Their targeting systems are failing, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. They can't lock onto our hull configuration because it doesn't follow any known combat logic. That's because we didn't use combat logic, Marshall replied, watching as another wave of Ravager ships fell to weapons they couldn't even detect. We used nature's logic, the logic that's kept Earth's species alive for millions of years. The Ravager commander's final transmission cut through the chaos, his voice a mix of fear and awe. What are you? Marshall's response was calm, even as her ship prepared to deliver another impossible series of attacks. We're human, and we've learned that the most powerful forces in the universe don't always come from the most obvious sources. The void of space lit up like an ocean storm as the unconventional unleashed its full arsenal. Those useless solar panels transformed into a network of energy lances, each one striking with the precision of an archer fish. The Ravager fleet's formation, once perfect, had devolved into a chaotic scramble for survival. "They're adapting," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. 3 of their ships have modified their shields to counter the pistol shrimp array. Commander Marshall nodded, unperturbed. "Just like we expected. Dr. Thompson, initiate the jellyfish protocols." "With pleasure." Thompson's voice came through the comm, filled with professional excitement. "You know, the box jellyfish has 24 eyes and multiple neural rings. Our version has something similar, but with quantum sensors." The unconventional, seemingly random hull protrusions suddenly pulsed in a new pattern. What had appeared to be structural weakness became a network of sensor arrays, each one operating on different quantum frequencies. The ship's erratic movements took on a new purpose, each twist and turn gathering data from multiple dimensions. "Neural network online," Rodriguez announced, "processing combat solutions." Now, the results were devastating. The unconventional struck from angles that shouldn't have existed, its attacks guided by sensor data that made traditional combat computers look primitive. 3 Ravager ships, their shields modified to stop the previous attacks, found themselves hit by something entirely new. "Commander," a Ravager captain's panicked voice cut through the combat chatter, "our adaptive shields are useless. Their weapons, they keep changing." Marshall's response was calm. "Evolution is constant, Captain. Earth's creatures have been adapting to new threats for millions of years. Why should our weapons be any different?" The unconventional spun through space in what looked like a death spiral, its hull plates shifting and rippling. But every movement was calculated, every apparent malfunction part of a combat dance that had more in common with nature's deadliest predators than traditional warships. "Multiple quantum signatures detected," Rodriguez called out. "They're trying to surround us with their remaining ships." "Perfect." Marshall's slight smile grew. "Show them why we studied the Portuguese man-o'-war." The ship's next transformation left the remaining Ravager captains speechless. Those mismatched hull sections that had drawn so much mockery suddenly separated, each piece maintaining a quantum connection to the main vessel. Like the colonial organism it was named for, the unconventional became many while remaining one. "Distributed combat mode engaged," Thompson reported. "Each section is operating at full combat efficiency. The Ravagers' targeting computers are having a meltdown trying to decide what to shoot at." Marshall watched as her ship's components danced through space, each one armed with a different combination of their bio-inspired weapons. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, begin the hunt." The unconventional's fragments moved like a school of predatory fish, each piece supporting the others in a deadly ballet of synchronized attacks. A Ravager cruiser would dodge one threat, only to find itself in the perfect position for another. "Their fleet cohesion is breaking down," Rodriguez reported with professional satisfaction. "Individual ships are trying to retreat, but their jump drives can't lock on through our quantum interference." "The Octopus defense is working perfectly," Thompson added. "Every time they adapt to one weapon, we show them 3 more they've never seen before." Marshall stood from her command chair, walking to the forward viewport to watch her ship's components reform into a single unit. The remaining Ravager ships looked like wounded animals now, their once fearsome appearance diminished by the realization that they were no longer the apex predators. "Send a message to all remaining Ravager vessels," she ordered. "Tell them it's time to learn why Earth's oceans are still the most dangerous place on our world, and why understanding nature's weapons is more valuable than all the advanced technology in the galaxy. The Unconventional's hull sealed itself back together, each piece locking into its seemingly random position. But now everyone watching knew the truth. There was nothing random about this ship. Every flaw was a feature, every weakness a weapon, and every mistake a carefully planned trap. The Ravager fleet's remnants clustered together like wounded animals, their once proud formation reduced to a defensive huddle. Of the original 37 capital ships, only 12 remained, their black hulls scared by weapons they still couldn't comprehend. They're attempting to link their shield systems, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, her fingers dancing across her console, creating some sort of collective defense grid. Commander Marshall nodded, watching the enemy's desperate maneuver with professional interest. Clever. Against conventional weapons. That might even work. She tapped her comm. Dr. Thompson, are you seeing this? Already on it, Commander. Thompson's voice held a note of satisfaction. You know what this reminds me of. A school of fish thinking they're safe in numbers. And what hunts schools of fish, Doctor? Dolphins, Commander. Highly intelligent, social predators that use coordination and sonic attacks. There was a pause as Thompson made some adjustments. The quantum harmonics are aligned, ready to show them our version. Marshall allowed herself a small smile. Lieutenant Rodriguez, initiate pattern echo. Let's show them why Earth's oceans never run out of surprises. The Unconventional began to move in a new way, its hull vibrating at frequencies that made the very fabric of space shiver. Those decorative protrusions that had drew so much mockery now pulsed with purpose, each one adding to a growing wave of quantum disruption. Their linked shields are starting to fluctuate, Rodriguez reported. The harmonic pattern is working just like the simulations. The Ravager ship's combined defense grid flickered like a candle in a storm. Their commanders' voices filled the command channel, each one more panicked than the last. Our shields are failing. The energy pattern makes no sense. We can't compensate for the frequency shifts. Marshall's voice cut through their chaos. Your mistake was thinking that advanced technology always beats natural evolution. Earth's creatures have been perfecting their weapons for millions of years. We just learned how to apply their lessons to space combat. As if to emphasize her point, the Unconventional's next attack demonstrated exactly why the ship's asymmetric design was actually perfect. Every odd angle, every mismatched plate, every seemingly random feature contributed to a weapon system based on nature's most effective predators. Mantis shrimp arrays at full power, Thompson called out. Quantum cavitation fields aligned. Ready for the killing stroke, Commander. Their ships are attempting to break formation, Rodriguez added. Jump drives powering up. But our quantum net has them trapped. Marshall stood from her command chair, her voice carrying across all frequencies. To all remaining Ravager vessels, you came here expecting to find easy prey. Instead, you found something your scans couldn't understand and your computers couldn't predict. You found a ship that looks wrong because it's not built according to your rules. It's built according to nature's rules. The Unconventional's hull began to pulse with energy that defied standard detection methods. Each fault in its design now revealed itself as part of a weapon system that had more in common with Earth's most effective predators than any traditional warship. Final warning, Marshall announced. Surrender now, or face the combined force of every natural weapon we've adapted. The response came from the Ravager fleet commander, his cybernetic voice trembling with a very organic fear. What are you people? What kind of world produces weapons like this? We're from Earth, Marshall replied simply, where everything is either predator or prey, and even the smallest creatures can be deadly if you know their secrets. She nodded to her crew. All systems, execute final strike pattern. Show them everything. The space around the Unconventional lit up like an ocean storm gone nuclear. every weapon system, every adapted natural defense, every bio-inspired attack pattern activated at once. The Ravager fleet's linked shields shattered like glass, unable to defend against forces that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. In the end, it wasn't even close. Nature, it turned out, was still the greatest weapons designer of all. The Galactic Defense Council's crystal spire had never been so silent. On the main display, the battle footage played for the third time, showing the Unconventional's transformation from apparent jumpkeep to ultimate predator. Admiral Zextal's scales had lost all color, fading to a pale gray of shock and disbelief. Commander Marshall stood at ease before the council, her uniform still bearing the scorch marks from the battle. Beside her, Dr. Thompson was excitedly explaining the science behind their bio-inspired weapons to a group of wide-eyed alien engineers. The pistol shrimp array alone generated forces equivalent to a small star's core, he explained, pulling up detailed schematics. And the mantis shrimp impact systems actually created localized points of quantum tunneling. But my personal favorite was the Portuguese man-o-war configuration. Enough, the Medusan ambassador's sensor tendrils writhed in agitation. We owe you an apology, Commander Marshall. We dismissed your ship as a joke, your designs as flawed. The joke, Admiral Zextal added, his scales finally regaining some color, was on us. While we focused on perfecting existing technologies, you looked to your world's smallest warriors for inspiration. Marshall nodded. Earth's oceans have been a combat laboratory for millions of years. Every creature there has either developed the perfect attack or the perfect defense. We just had to learn how to scale their solutions up. The crystalline Nexus Lord leaned forward, their faceted surface reflecting the battle footage. Already, our shipyards are requesting access to your designs. The quantum cavitation systems alone could revolutionize space combat. With all due respect, Marshall replied, you're still missing the point. The specific weapons aren't what matter. It's the philosophy behind them. Look to the unexpected. Learn from the overlooked. Never assume that size equals power. Lieutenant Rodriguez entered the chamber, carrying a fresh data tablet. Commander, the final battle analysis is complete. The unconventional systems performed at 112% of projected capacity. And she smiled. We're already receiving design requests from 17 different species. The Medusan ambassador's tendrils curved in curiosity. You would share your technology. Of course, Marshall said. But more importantly, we want to share our methodology. Every world has its own unique ecosystem, its own perfectly evolved weapons and defenses. Imagine what we could learn from each other. Dr. Thompson pulled up a new hologram, showing the Unconventional's next planned upgrade. We're already working on systems inspired by deep-sea creatures that live near thermal vents. The potential applications for shield technology are incredible. Admiral Zextal's scales shifted to the deep blue of respectful understanding. You've changed everything, Commander. Not just how we fight, but how we think about fighting. That was always the goal, Marshall replied. The Unconventional isn't just a ship, it's a statement, a reminder that the most powerful forces in nature often come from the most unexpected sources. The council chamber erupted in discussion as more alien engineers and scientists crowded around Dr. Thompson's displays. The crystalline Nexus Lord made a sound like chiming bells, their species equivalent of laughter. To think, they said, we called your ship a collection of flaws and mistakes. In reality, it was perfect. Every flaw a weapon, every mistake a carefully planned feature. Marshall allowed herself a full smile this time. In nature, everything serves a purpose, even if that purpose isn't immediately obvious to observers. As the Council began drafting new protocols for joint species research into bio-inspired technology, Marshall watched the final moments of the battle footage. The unconventional, her impossible ship, danced through space like something from Earth's ancient oceans, proving once and for all that the greatest innovations often come from the humblest sources. "Commander," Lieutenant Rodriguez said quietly, "engineering reports. The improved jellyfish systems are ready for testing. Shall we show them what else Earth's oceans have taught us?" Marshall nodded, already looking forward to the next round of shocked expressions. After all, Earth had millions of species, each with its own perfect weapon or defense, just waiting to be adapted. The galaxy was about to learn why underestimating nature, or humanity, was always a fatal mistake.